Welcome to my presentation on Galatea by John Lilly, a comedy designed to be performed on the Elizabethan stage specifically for Queen Elizabeth I. To give a brief summary, in the story, the community must appease the god Neptune by sacrificing a beautiful virgin every 5 years in order to avoid being destroyed. Disguised as boys by their fathers, two young virgins, Galatea and Phillida, who are at risk of being sacrificed, are sent to the forest separately, where they find one another. In the forest, a spiritual realm is actively at work. Diana, the goddess of virginity, and her nymphs are hunting in the same forest as well as Cupid, Venus's son, who enter the scene and run into the two girls. Interestingly enough, the two girls fall in love with one another, neither knowing that the other is not truly a boy. Meanwhile, Cupid runs around causing mischief for Diana's nymphs, and Diana takes Cupid to punish him. Ultimately, the god Neptune drives the story as he is the one who demands a sacrifice, specifically of a virgin girl, and ends the conflict between Venus and Diana, who are arguing over who should have Cupid. Neptune tells Diana that if she gives Venus her son back, he will not require a sacrifice from the village, and Diana agrees to the proposal. The first central theme of the play has to do with feminine virtue. Feminine virtue is the idea of women being selfless and abstaining from premarital sex. It holds women to a high standard to what culture deems virtuous and honorable. In the Renaissance, to be virtuous for a woman meant to be pure and self-sacrificial. Clearly, in both the Renaissance and Galatea, females were considered important to society, even if treatment towards them did not always properly reflect that. In Galatea, the two main female characters do not both share the same feelings towards their roles as women and the virtues they are expected to uphold. Galatea challenges feminine virtue, taking on somewhat stereotypical male characteristics by desiring to be the hero and die for her community. In this case, it would actually be seen as the father who takes on the stereotypical female characteristics of weakness and fear when he tries to protect his daughter rather than save the entire community, suggesting a reversal of traditional gender roles. Phillida, on the other hand, upholds her femininity as something to be valued and praised. She even complains to her father about wearing boys' clothing because she does not want to be associated with them. In this light, the white lily represents the purity the women in Galatea are expected to strive for and maintain, and the 5 petals reflect the further expectation that as beautiful young virgins, every 5 years, one will be sacrificed. The veins throughout the leaves of the flower reveal the idea of feminine virtue running deep in their society. The flower is partially tainted, however, because this reflects subtle challenges towards feminine virtue that are seen in the play, such as when Galatea willingly takes on stereotypical male characteristics by desiring to be a sacrifice. Although she is upholding her role as a woman in her society, the way she accepts it with boldness and a desire to be the hero could suggest that she supports men and women being equal, which was not a well-received ideology in this time. Even at the end of the play, the girls fall in love despite not knowing they are both girls, challenging a religious view on marriage that was in favor of men and women marrying, and not two people of the same gender. I'm going to use a mask to touch on the theme of disguise. The mask represents the disguise that the girls, Galatea and Phillida, are forced to put on in order to avoid being sacrificed. The mask is incomplete, covering only half of the face because, just as the girls are not successful in the end to keep their true identities a secret, the masks do not fully cover the faces and the true identity underneath can be discovered. The right side of the face, being the mask, represents the identity of a boy that both girls adopt. It is black because it is an impure representation of who Galatea and Phillida are. The cracks in the material reveal the fact that, just as a mask is falling apart, although both girls are disguised, the truth will be found as their secret will also fall away. The mask's face appears concerned and unhappy, which reflects how, for one, Galatea feels somewhat frustrated for not being allowed by her father to just be sacrificed, but must instead pretend she is someone she is not, and that Phillida feels somewhat frustrated for being forced into pretending to be a boy, which she resents. Finally, the ribbon that is meant to be tied around the head to secure the mask reveals how the girls are tied down by their gender and virginity. Yet the ribbon is also able to be untied and pulled off, which brings to light how their fake identities are not permanent and they will eventually be able to step into their true identities. Sacrifice is the final main theme that I'll be discussing today. While there are many characters and subplots that tie into the theme of sacrifice, the main sacrifice that I want to touch on is the sacrifice of virginity. I'm going to use the image of a Renaissance woman with a child, a sacrifice to Neptune, and the crown on one side of a chasm with everyone else safe on the other side. We know, of course, that in Galatea, girls had to be virgins as a sacrifice for the community to continue in life. What's interesting is that when we look at the time Galatea was written in, a woman's purity was also sacrificed to continue life. What I'm arguing is that this story represents how women during the Renaissance were made sacrifices by marrying a man and having children, so that life would continue. The virgin girls in Galatea are, in the same way as virgins, sacrificing themselves for the perpetuation of life, though not through their own offspring. Let's look at this a little closer. Queen Elizabeth I never married and was known as the Virgin Queen. In the eyes of many people living in England, she sacrificed herself for the good of the country, marrying the crown instead of a man. It is possible that Lily here is honoring the fact that her purity was a sacrifice that she made to protect her country. I think it's pretty clear why the woman and her child, the crown being Queen Elizabeth I, and the virgin sacrificed to Neptune, are all on the same side of a chasm. They are interchangeably linked here as sacrifices of virginity. The reason the chasm exists is to draw our attention towards the separation between sacrifices of virgins and everyone else. Being a virgin both in the time of the play and the story of the play itself meant that they were set apart from the rest of society with a special duty to uphold. Yet the chasm expresses more than just a separation, but also an inability to escape this identity forced upon them.